They were known around town as the Boys, though each was a grown man. 5 friends from Yuba City, California, Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, Ted Weiher, Jack Madruga, and Gary Mathias, all shared one thing in common: a deep and genuine friendship that defied circumstance. Each of them lived with mild intellectual or psychological challenges. Ted Weiher, 32, gentle and patient, worked for his stepfather's gardening business. Jack Madruga, 29, was an Army veteran and one of the few who could drive. Bill Sterling, 29, volunteered at a local hospital, while Jack Hewitt, the youngest at 24, adored sports and laughter. Gary Mathias, 25, had served in the Army too, stationed in Germany, but struggled after returning home, diagnosed with schizophrenia. Yet when on his medication, he was stable, kind, witty, and well-liked. They were inseparable, bound by a love of sports and routine. Every week, they met to watch basketball, plan local games, and cheer for their team, the UC Davis Aggies. Their parents described them as dependable, creatures of habit who stuck together and rarely ventured far from home. But on the night of February 24th, 1978, they did. They packed into Jack Madruga's pale turquoise Mercury Montego and drove 60 miles north to Chico to watch a college basketball game. They laughed, bought snacks, and promised to return by dawn. They never came home. The Chico game ended around 10 p.m. Witnesses saw the 5 men leaving in good spirits, joking, waving to other fans. Their next confirmed stop was at a Bears Market convenience store, just after closing time. The clerk remembered them well, a friendly group buying soft drinks, candy bars, milk, and pies. That was the last verified sighting of all 5 together. The following day, when none of the men returned home, families grew worried. They had a basketball game scheduled the next morning, their own league's championship, and not one of them would have missed it willingly. By nightfall, the police were notified, and a full search began. 2 days later, a forest ranger discovered Jack Madruga's Mercury abandoned on a remote mountain road, deep in the Plumas National Forest. The car was about 70 miles from Chico, high in the Sierra foothills, near a place called Rogers Cow Camp. Its location made no sense. It was far off any logical route home, along a rough logging road covered in snow, yet the car showed no signs of struggle or accident. It had enough gas to go 20 more miles, the tires were fine, and the keys were gone, as if the driver had calmly stepped out and walked away. Inside were the snack wrappers from the market, untouched, preserved, eerie reminders of a trip gone wrong. Searchers found footprints in the snow, 5 sets leading uphill into the forest. Then, nothing. Days passed without trace. Heavy snow fell, burying the region under several feet of ice and obscuring tracks. Rescue crews searched by air and on foot, battling freezing winds. For 2 weeks, nothing emerged. No movement, no heat signatures, no sound. Families refused to give up. They plastered towns with posters, spoke to radio stations, and begged for information. The police interviewed locals, hunters, and loggers, anyone who might have seen 5 men walking the road that night. One report came from a man named Joseph Shones, a local living not far from where the car was found. That night, Shones had been driving the same road when his car became stuck in the snow. While trying to free it, he suffered a mild heart attack and lay inside his vehicle, drifting in and out of consciousness. Sometime after midnight, he claimed to have seen a group of people, 1 woman, and 4 men, standing outside a truck or car using flashlights. They seemed to be talking, not panicking. When he called out for help, they went silent. The lights turned off. Moments later, they were gone. Shones's testimony was never fully confirmed, but the timeline matched. Whatever happened to the Yuba County Five began that night on that isolated road. The car was examined in detail by investigators from Yuba County and the Plumas County Sheriff's Office. It was a 1969 Mercury Montego, clean, undamaged, and resting along a narrow, snow-covered road at an elevation of about 4,000 feet. The keys were missing, but the doors were unlocked, and one window had been rolled down slightly. Inside, authorities found the wrappers from candy bars, milk cartons, and snack packages, evidence of the stop at Bears Market in Chico. The car had enough gasoline for at least 50 more miles. Its tires were not stuck, and the undercarriage showed no scraping, meaning the driver had navigated the rough road carefully despite snowdrifts. Investigators concluded that the car could have easily reversed downhill, but instead, it had been left there intentionally. A folded road map of California lay in the glove compartment. None of the men had packed winter clothing, flashlights, or supplies for a night outdoors. The altitude was freezing, dropping to -7 degrees Celsius that week. Searchers found footprints in the snow heading north from the car, 5 sets, side by side, then splitting, then vanishing near the tree line as snowfall deepened. Helicopters scanned for heat signatures and shapes, but found nothing. By early March, the weather worsened, and the search was suspended until the spring thaw. The car sat there, untouched, its pale body half buried in snow, waiting for answers the mountains refused to give. It was not until June that the mountains began to thaw enough for search teams to return. On June 4th, 1978, a small group of motorcyclists exploring the area near Rogers Cow Camp stumbled upon a United States Forest Service trailer. It stood roughly 20 miles from where the car had been found. When they opened the door, they found the body of Ted Weiher lying inside. He was stretched out on a bed, covered by 8 sheets pulled over his body and tucked tightly around his chin. Next to him was a table holding an open can of food and a notebook with numbers scrawled on one page. Weiher had survived for weeks. Medical examiners later determined that he had likely lived up to 13 weeks after the disappearance. His beard growth and weight loss supported the estimate, but the trailer itself told a stranger story. Inside were matches, propane, food, and clothing, enough to sustain 5 men for months, yet none of it had been used. The propane tank outside the trailer was full. The men could have heated the shelter, cooked food, or signaled rescuers. They had not. One window had been broken, likely to gain entry. There was no sign of a struggle, and no footprints remained around the structure. The others were nowhere in sight. Over the following days, search teams spread outward from the trailer. 2.5 miles away, they found the remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling lying close together in the forest, partially under snow. They appeared to have died of exposure. A few hundred yards away, searchers discovered Jack Hewitt's spine and fragments of clothing scattered by animals. It was determined that he too had succumbed to the cold. Only Gary Mathias, the 5th man, remained missing. In the trailer, searchers found Mathias's tennis shoes beside Weiher's body. It was believed that Mathias had left wearing Weiher's heavier boots, perhaps to seek help. No trace of him has ever been confirmed. An autopsy revealed that Weiher's body showed no signs of violence. He had died from starvation and exposure. Despite being surrounded by food and fuel, on a shelf were 12 unopened sea ration tins, blankets, clothing, and matches. The truck batteries were in place, capable of starting the propane heater, but they had never been used. Investigators could not determine why the men had traveled so far into the mountains, nor why they failed to use the supplies that could have saved them. The case officially remained unsolved. Following the discovery of the bodies, investigators from Plumas County, Yuba County, and the California Department of Justice coordinated a full review of the evidence. They reconstructed the likely path from the abandoned Mercury to the trailer. The distance between the two was roughly 19 miles through rugged terrain, deep snow, and dense forest. It was difficult to explain how men in street clothing, with no winter gear, could have traveled that far. The trail led uphill for several miles before descending into the area where the trailer stood. Temperatures that night had fallen to below freezing, and heavy snowfall followed the next morning. Investigators speculated that once the car became stuck, or they believed it was stuck, the group had decided to continue on foot. It is unknown why they did not return downhill toward safety, as the path back to the valley was far shorter than the one they took into the mountains. Forensic analysis of the car found no mechanical failure. It had not been driven erratically, and the fuel tank was nearly full. The ignition key was missing, and the battery had run down only from time and cold. Investigators could not find any motive for foul play. No injuries suggested an attack, and there were no signs of robbery. Still, families insisted their sons would never have willingly left the main road at night. The question remained, what drew them so deep into the forest? In the weeks that followed, detectives re-examined every possible lead. The most consistent was the statement by Joseph Shones, who had seen a group with flashlights on the same mountain road the night the men vanished. He described 5 figures and possibly a woman. No other vehicles were confirmed in the area, yet tire impressions near the Mercury suggested at least one more car had been present. Another theory involved a possible wrong turn. The men may have intended to head south from Chico toward home, but accidentally turned east into the foothills. That route, though, would have required a deliberate sequence of turns, unlikely for experienced drivers. Some investigators considered the idea that Gary Mathias, who was managing a mental health condition, may have experienced confusion or distress that night, influencing the group's decisions. However, there was no evidence of conflict or panic. Those who knew Gary said he was calm, capable, and close to his friends. Wildlife or external threats were ruled out early. No tracks, no struggle, no signs of animal attack near the car or trailer. Natural causes, hypothermia, exhaustion, starvation, were listed as the primary conclusions for the deaths. Yet none of these explanations answered the central mystery: why 5 men, known for caution, had driven 70 miles into remote mountains, and why, once inside a stock trailer, they had not used the supplies that could have saved them. Of the 5, Gary Mathias was never found. Search teams combed the forest for months using dogs, metal detectors, and aerial sweeps. No bones, clothing, or personal items were recovered. Mathias's sneakers left inside the trailer suggested he had departed wearing Ted Weiher's boots, likely to seek help. If he did, the terrain ahead was nearly impassable, especially with the snow still deep in shaded valleys. The theory that he succumbed to the elements like the others remains the most probable, but without evidence, it cannot be confirmed. Over the decades, small discoveries occasionally reignited public interest. In the early 1980s, 2 hikers reported finding fragments of fabric and bone several miles beyond the original search perimeter. But DNA testing was not yet possible. In the 2000s, new searches using ground-penetrating radar found nothing further. Today, Gary Mathias remains listed as missing, presumed deceased. His file is still active within Yuba County records, and no credible sightings have ever surfaced. The last confirmed evidence of him remains his shoes, left behind in the trailer, a silent detail that still puzzles investigators. With his absence, the story of the Yuba County Five remains incomplete. 4 confirmed dead, 1 vanished into the mountains, and questions that continue more than 40 years later. Autopsies were performed on all 4 recovered bodies by the Plumas County Coroner's Office. The findings were consistent with prolonged exposure and starvation, compounded by hypothermia. No injuries indicated foul play or struggle. Ted Weiher's body presented the most evidence of survival. He had lost almost 100 pounds and had several frostbitten toes. His beard growth was estimated at 10 to 13 weeks. He died wrapped in 8 bed sheets, which investigators believed he had arranged himself. The trailer's food supply included sea rations, tinned fruit, and dehydrated meals left behind by Forest Service crews. A few cans had been opened with a U.S. Army P-38 can opener, a type that Gary Mathias had learned to use during his service. This detail suggested at least one of the men had survived long enough to feed the group, or himself, before succumbing. Inside the trailer were 12 unopened boxes of rations, a full 150-gallon propane tank connected to a working heater, and dry matches in a nearby drawer. No attempt had been made to light the stove or heater. Blankets, extra clothing, and lanterns were untouched. Medical analysis concluded the men had died gradually, not suddenly, with no sign of internal toxins or trauma. The cause of death for all but Mathias was ruled exposure and malnutrition. The case remained active but unsolved. The condition of the Mercury Montego remained one of the most puzzling elements. Investigators noted that even in deep snow, the car showed no tire spin marks, suggesting the driver had not attempted to accelerate out of trouble. The vehicle's automatic transmission was in neutral, and the handbrake was not engaged. Footprints leading away from the car matched all 5 men's shoe sizes, but the depth and spacing implied they were walking calmly, not running. They led uphill for several hundred yards before vanishing where the snow had drifted. The decision to leave the car remains unexplained. Tests showed the engine would start immediately when jump-started later. Fuel lines, tires, and ignition were intact. Even with heavy snow, experienced rescuers said the car could have been driven downhill to safety once daylight came. Inside the car were maps, food, and personal items, but no sign of panic. A folded program from the Chico basketball game lay on the dashboard. It gave no clue why they had chosen the mountain road that night. The case file notes no evidence of third-party involvement. No fingerprints other than those of the 5 men were found. Still, law enforcement officials admitted the collective behavior defied normal logic, even under duress. By late 1978, the combined investigation produced more than 500 pages of reports and interviews. The California Department of Justice classified the case as suspicious, but without clear evidence of a crime. All physical evidence was logged and preserved: clothing, personal items, vehicle components, food remains, and photographs. The trailer and car were examined for signs of tampering or forced entry. none were found. Search operations cost over $200,000, making it one of the most extensive manhunts in California's mountain history at that time. Local authorities closed the primary field search in September 1978, though volunteer teams continued intermittently for years. Today, the case remains open under the jurisdiction of Yuba County Sheriff's Office. Files list the event as an unresolved missing persons and accidental death investigation. Periodic reviews have occurred whenever new technology allowed for improved analysis, but none have altered the core findings. No confirmed motive, medical event, or external threat has ever been proven. More than 4 decades later, the Yuba County Five remain a mystery defined not by evidence lost, but by evidence that never should have existed together. When the case was declared dormant in late 1978, the families of the 5 men refused to let it fade. They organized local searches, posted appeals, and stayed in contact with both county and state investigators for years afterward. Mabel Madruga, Jack's mother, spoke publicly to the press, saying her son would never have left the highway voluntarily. She believed the group must have been misled or frightened into the mountains. Ted Wyher's stepfather, Joe Shones, not the same man who saw lights, echoed similar doubts, insisting that Ted was cautious and would not have gone far into danger knowingly. Families described the men as gentle and trusting, unlikely to sense deceit or danger. They questioned how 5 adults, all familiar with the region, could have become so lost, yet police found no evidence suggesting anyone had lured or followed them. In 1979, a small memorial service was held in Yuba City for the 4 confirmed victims. Gary Mathias's name was included, though officially he remained listed as missing. His parents continued to search independently, distributing flyers across Northern California. As years passed, media coverage slowed, but the families maintained contact with law enforcement. They kept the files open, ensuring the Yuba County Five would not be forgotten. Local newspapers, the Appeal Democrat and the Sacramento Bee, covered the story extensively throughout 1978 and 79. Headlines described it as the American Dyatlov Pass, comparing it to the Russian case of hikers lost under strange circumstances 2 decades earlier. Television networks produced short investigative segments, focusing on the contrast between the men's friendly personalities and the isolation of the mountain. Their story was often framed as a modern wilderness enigma, an event without clear cause, only facts that refused to align. Public reaction was divided. Some saw it as a tragedy of misjudgment and cold weather. Others believed there were details withheld or overlooked. The consistent evidence, intact vehicle, accessible shelter, unused supplies, remained central to every report. The case resurfaced in feature articles across the 1990s and 2000s, appearing in national mystery magazines and online archives. Each retelling reintroduced the same data, the route, the conditions, the timeline, and each ended with the same unanswered question: why? By the 2010s, documentaries and podcasts revisited the event, labeling it one of California's strangest unsolved disappearances. Even now, the name Yuba County Five is recognized among researchers studying unexplained wilderness incidents. More than 40 years have passed since the men vanished into the Sierra foothills, yet their story remains one of California's most persistent mysteries. For law enforcement, it stands as a cautionary study in missing persons investigation, under severe terrain and weather. For the public, it remains an enigma that resists simple explanation. In 2019, the Yuba County Sheriff's Department digitized portions of the case file for preservation. Photographs of the car, the trailer, and the search area were restored and archived. The department continues to receive occasional inquiries from journalists and amateur researchers. Every few years, someone proposes a new idea, a wrong turn, panic, disorientation, or human error. But none fit every detail. The car, the calm footprints, the unused heater, all still defy logic. To this day, the site remains largely untouched. Forestry workers occasionally pass through Rogers Cow Camp, but few stop. The trailer, though dismantled long ago, once marked the spot where the search ended, but the questions did not. The Yuba County Five remain officially classified as an open investigation. Their fate, recorded only in fragments of evidence and official statements, continues to represent a case where the facts exist, yet the meaning does not. In the decades following the case, advances in forensic technology led to periodic re-examinations of key evidence. Between 1998 and 2003, items recovered from the trailer and the Mercury Montego were retested for trace DNA and environmental residue. No foreign profiles were detected. The California Department of Justice Laboratory confirmed that all samples, fingerprints, hair, and biological traces matched the known victims. No unidentified prints or third-party evidence were ever found. In 2018, on the 40th anniversary, investigators from Yuba County Sheriff's Office in Plumas County reopened the case file for review using digital imaging. The original 35mm photographs were scanned and enhanced to re-examine snow depth, distances, and object placement. The findings confirmed the accuracy of the original search maps. The official report reaffirmed the cause of death as exposure, starvation, and hypothermia. No additional trauma, environmental toxins, or injuries consistent with assault were found. The absence of a crime scene was reconfirmed. The updated file closed once again without new evidence, but the digital archive ensured the data could be revisited for future study. All material remains stored at the Yuba County Sheriff's Records Division. Former Plumas County Sheriff's investigator John Carpenter, who participated in the original search, later described the case as one of the most unusual disappearances I have ever seen. He emphasized the consistency of the physical evidence, but acknowledged that the group's actions never made sense within known behavior patterns. Several officers involved maintained that fear or confusion could explain the trek into the mountains, though not the decision to remain in an unheated trailer with supplies. Search leader Lieutenant Lance Ayers stated in a later interview that everything pointed toward survival being possible, but survival never happened. Official comments over the years remained cautious. Investigators avoided speculation and continued to classify the case as a mystery within factual limits. Each review confirmed that no criminal involvement had ever been established, and no suspect or accomplice had emerged in over 4 decades. In an archived internal memo from 1978, one officer summarized the problem clearly. "We know where they went, what they left behind, and where they died. What we don't know is why." That sentence remains the most concise summary in the file. The Yuba County Five continued to attract study from criminal psychologists and cold case researchers. In 2005, The case was included in a University of Nevada paper analyzing decision-making under extreme environmental stress. The study concluded that group dynamics, mental health factors, and environmental disorientation likely interacted to produce fatal decisions without criminal intent. Cold case specialists revisited the route data, comparing it to seasonal road closures and snowpack records from the U.S. Forest Service. Weather charts confirmed the road to Rogers Cow Camp had been officially closed that night, meaning the men entered a restricted zone unintentionally. In 2020, online forums and independent researchers used satellite imagery to remap the terrain with modern coordinates. Their digital overlays matched the distances and travel time calculated in the original reports, further verifying the accuracy of the official timeline. To date, no evidence contradicts the original physical findings. The event remains categorized as accidental death and disappearance, unsolved, but not criminal. It continues to be cited in criminology and wilderness survival training as a case demonstrating how ordinary circumstances can escalate into disaster when weather, isolation, and fear align. Based on verified records, witness accounts, and environmental data, investigators reconstructed the most probable sequence of events. February 24, 1978. The men depart Yuba City at approximately 5:30 p.m. in Jack Madruga's Mercury Montego. They arrive in Chico around 7:30 and attend a college basketball game. 10 p.m. They leave the stadium, stopping at Bear's Market for snacks before driving south out of town. This is the last confirmed sighting. Early hours, February 25th. Their car travels east, not south, entering the Sierra foothills. At around 4,000 feet elevation, the road narrows and becomes snow-covered. The car stops near Rogers Cow Camp, more than 70 miles from Chico. Morning, February 25th. A storm hits, dropping over 2 feet of snow overnight. Temperatures fall below freezing. No contact is made with family or friends. The men are officially reported missing that evening. June 4th, 1978. The bodies are discovered after the thaw, confirming exposure deaths. The timeline suggests that some of the men survived for days, possibly weeks, after abandoning the vehicle. The region where the Yuba County Five disappeared lies within the Plumas National Forest, near the junction of the Feather and Yuba Rivers. The road they traveled, known locally as the Quincy-LaPorte Road, rises steeply through canyons, dense pine, and rugged switchbacks. During winter, the route is treacherous, often closed due to snow accumulation and fallen debris. At the time, only seasonal forestry personnel and snowcat operators used it. There were no active cabins, no open businesses, and little chance of encountering help. Temperatures during the period averaged -7 degrees Celsius at night, with wind chill reaching -12. Exposure time without shelter could result in hypothermia in less than 2 hours. The trailer where Ted Weiher was found stood near a small clearing surrounded by pines, about 19.4 miles from the car's position. The terrain between included steep ravines, frozen creeks, and snowdrifts up to 6 feet deep. Traveling this distance on foot under those conditions would have taken over 10 hours. Topographic surveys later confirmed that the route they followed was not on any direct path home, adding to the mystery of their direction choice that night. As of this year, the Yuba County 5 case remains active but unsolved. The file is retained by the Yuba County Sheriff's Office under reference number 782613. All physical evidence, including the mercury's components, photographs, and autopsy reports, has been digitized and archived for historical preservation. No new physical leads have surfaced since the early 1980s. Gary Mathias is still listed as a missing person on the California Department of Justice Missing and Unidentified Persons Unit database. His profile has been periodically updated with modern age progression imagery, though no credible sightings have ever been reported. Occasional documentaries and research projects continue to highlight the case as one of California's most perplexing mountain disappearances. Law enforcement agencies have stated that while no active criminal investigation is ongoing, they remain open to verifiable new information. The Yuba County 5 stand has a record of endurance, tragedy, and unanswered logic, a factual mystery preserved by the cold, unchanging stillness of the Sierra Nevada. The Yuba County Sheriff's Office retains custody of the remaining evidence in a temperature-controlled storage facility. Among the preserved items are the Mercury Montego's vehicle components, including the glove compartment, dashboard panels, and tire samples. Each bears a unique inventory tag issued during the 1978 investigation. Photographs taken by the Plumas County Search and Rescue Team were converted to digital format in 2019. These include over 200 color and black and white images of the vehicle, surrounding terrain, and trailer site. Each photograph has been cataloged with GPS metadata based on modern coordinates. The autopsy records, signed by the county coroner, detail estimated times of death, physical condition, and environmental factors. Each report confirms the absence of external trauma or toxins. Tissue samples were stored, but later destroyed under standard medical retention limits. Personal effects, wallets, watches, identification cards, and keys were returned to the families after the original investigation concluded. No new materials have been recovered since. The entire collection remains sealed except for limited public access by appointment for journalists and accredited researchers. Requests to view the files are processed through the county's Cold Case Division. Jack Madruga, age 29, was a U.S. Army veteran and the owner of the Mercury Montego. He was last seen driving the group to Chico. His body was discovered on June 4th, 1978, approximately 11 miles from the vehicle. Autopsy confirmed death by exposure. Bill Sterling, age 29, volunteered at a local hospital and was described as deeply compassionate. He was found near Madruga, close to a small stream in the forest. He too had died of exposure, likely within days of the disappearance. Ted Wyher, age 32, survived the longest. Found inside the U.S. Forest Service trailer, he had remained alive for several weeks, based on food consumption and physical evidence. His remains were discovered fully covered and undisturbed. Jack Hewitt, age 24, was located several miles from the trailer. Due to wildlife activity and weather, his remains were limited to skeletal elements, identified through dental records. Gary Mathias, age 25, remains missing. His shoes and personal items were located in the trailer, but no trace of him was ever confirmed elsewhere. His official status is missing, presumed deceased. All known records of the Yuba County 5 investigation have been preserved through multiple agencies. The California Department of Justice, Plumas County, and Yuba County Sheriff's Office maintain identical copies. Each includes interview transcripts, witness statements, autopsy reports, and search maps. The case is indexed under the California Public Records Act, though portions containing personal family data remain redacted. Declassified materials have been referenced by journalists, academic researchers, and documentary filmmakers. In 2022, a nonfiction podcast gained temporary permission to access a selection of files for reproduction. Their analysis matched the official record, confirming no new findings and no inconsistencies with original evidence logs. Yuba County continues to list the case as open for additional credible information. No statute of limitation applies due to the classification as accidental death with missing persons. With every document verified, every artifact cataloged, and every statement cross-checked, the Yuba County Five remain one of the few mysteries where nothing is missing except explanation. Only a handful of credible witness statements were recorded in connection with the disappearance. The most detailed came from Joseph Shones, a local resident who was driving home along the Oroville-Quincy Road on the same night the five men vanished. At approximately 11:30 p.m., his car became stuck in a snowbank near the same stretch of road where the Mercury Montego was later found. While attempting to free the vehicle, Shones experienced chest pain and returned to his seat, keeping the engine on for warmth. He later told investigators that sometime after midnight, he saw a group of people, one appearing to be a woman, standing near a truck with headlights on. When he called out for assistance, the lights were extinguished and the figures moved away silently. In a later interview, Shones said one of the individuals may have walked past his car with a flashlight. Snowfall was heavy and visibility was poor. He did not leave the vehicle until daylight, at which time he encountered the Mercury Montego, abandoned nearby. Authorities considered his testimony credible but incomplete, as he was semi-conscious through the night and alone. No other eyewitnesses were ever confirmed. His description of the location and time frame matched the known route of the Yuba County Five. The search effort began officially on February 28, 1978, 3 days after the men were reported missing. Over 100 personnel participated, including law enforcement officers, volunteers, and helicopter units from the California Highway Patrol. Early operations focused on the primary roads leading from Chico to Yuba City. When the Mercury Montego was found on March 2nd, the search zone shifted to the Plumas National Forest. Snow depths in some areas exceeded 5 feet. Tracking dogs were flown in from Sacramento, but freezing temperatures made scent trails unreliable. Helicopter overflights with infrared equipment detected no heat signatures. Rescuers followed possible footprints from the vehicle northward, but within half a mile they were obscured by new snowfall. Teams extended the perimeter daily, marking grid sections with colored tape. No clothing, tools, or discarded items were found. The search was temporarily suspended on March 12th due to storms and resumed periodically through late spring. Once the snow melted in June, recovery operations led to the discovery of the trailer and the bodies. It was one of the largest coordinated mountain searches in Northern California history. Throughout the investigation, communication between agencies was documented in written memoranda. Copies were exchanged between Yuba County, Plumas County, and the California Department of Justice. Each included chain of custody logs for evidence, interview transcripts, and procedural directives. Radio transmissions from search teams were recorded and later transcribed. Most concerned logistical updates, temperature, location, time, but several noted unusual observations such as lights seen near Camp Rogers and fresh snow tracks, undetermined origin. Both entries were logged, but never verified. Daily situation reports were sent to the Yuba County Sheriff's Office summarizing mileage, weather conditions, and findings. Each report was signed by the lead field commander and filed sequentially. These documents form the backbone of the surviving archive. Interdepartmental notes show no evidence of withheld information or missing documentation. Every step of the search and evidence collection was recorded. The structure of the file reflects one of the most detailed mountain rescue case logs in the state's history. By late June 1978, recovery efforts had concluded across the Rogers Cow Camp region. Search leaders declared that all known evidence had been retrieved and cataloged. Weather conditions had stabilized, and further search beyond the immediate area was considered impractical. The U.S. Forest Service trailer was cleared of remaining materials and later dismantled due to safety concerns. Metal fragments and timber were removed by helicopter in early July. Only the concrete foundation and access road remained. Final field reports were submitted to Yuba County Sheriff's Office on July 10th, confirming the identities of the 4 deceased men. Each family received official documentation within 2 weeks. The car was towed to the county impound facility and photographed extensively. After testing, it was returned to the Madruga family, who later sold it for parts. All physical materials connected to the case were sealed and logged. No further search operations were planned. The file was transferred to the county's cold case division, where it remains to this day. On August the 1st, 1978, the Yuba County Sheriff's Office and the California Department of Justice jointly issued a final classification report. It listed the incident as accidental death by exposure and starvation, with 1 associated missing person. The findings were signed by the county coroner, lead investigator, and state liaison officer. Each confirmed that no evidence supported the presence of external foul play. The deaths were deemed unintentional and attributed to severe environmental conditions. The missing person case for Gary Mathias remained open. Annual reviews were required by state law, with the file updated each year until 1986, when it was formally transferred to inactive status, pending new information. In 1993, Mathias's record was added to the California Missing Persons System database, allowing for national cross-referencing. No matches have ever been returned. All other aspects of the investigation are considered administratively closed. No criminal investigation remains active. The Yuba County Five remain one of California's most detailed and perplexing mountain disappearance cases. Every physical clue has been examined, photographed, and cataloged. Every interview has been transcribed and verified. Yet the simple question of why still stands unanswered. 5 friends left a basketball game on a February night in 1978. Their car was found 70 miles away, perfectly functional. 4 were later discovered dead of exposure, surrounded by supplies that could have saved them. The 5th, Gary Mathias, has never been found. Investigators have no proof of foul play, no indication of intent, and no conclusive explanation. What remains is a case defined by contradiction, logic without reason, evidence without conclusion. The official record lists their deaths as accidental, the search as complete, and the mystery as ongoing. More than 40 years later, the Sierra Nevada still holds its silence. Only the files remain, precise, clinical, and enduring. a record of 5 men who vanished into the cold and never came home. Thank you for listening to this account of the Yuba County Five, a true story of 5 friends who vanished in the Sierra Nevada, their fate documented in reports, yet still unanswered after more than 40 years. Our last journey took us far from Earth, chasing the path of Atlas 3I across the solar system. But tonight we came home, to a mystery written not in the stars, but in snow and silence. If you value stories told with truth, evidence, and respect, please subscribe to Sleepy Mysteries. Each episode explores real events, where fact and mystery walk side by side. Share this story, leave a comment, and tell us, what do you believe truly happened that night in 1978? And next time, we travel deeper into the unseen, a land of shadows, old legends, and things not easily explained. Join Regina Sage Monroe for another true mystery waiting to be told. Until then, this is Sleepy Mysteries, where every fact has a shadow and every mystery a voice.